Well, the gauntlet is over, and thank God for that. The Reeling Eagles wrap up the season starting Monday on Christmas Day with the New York Giants, and it's high time for a get-well blowout for the Birds. Sal Paolantonio will join us to talk about the Eagles and the playoff picture. Tim McManus joins us to talk Jalen Hurts, and we've got your usual picks, props, starts, and sits, and much more on a Week 16 Christmas edition of This Week in Pro Football.
It's time for This Week in Pro Football, a deep dive into the key issues and marquee matchups in the National Football League. For the next 60 minutes, we invite you to sit back or lean in with host Pat Callahan as we preview the week's Eagles matchup, big games, breaking stories, and all news NFL. It's This Week in Pro Football, right now on JAKIB Media Sports.
Hello, everyone. Pat Callahan joining you for a Week 16 edition of This Week in Pro Football and the National Football League. As we are now rumbling, we are neck deep in the playoff push right now and the positioning push amongst teams in both the National Football Conference and the American Football Conference. Still 26 teams. I think if I remember that number right from Sal Paolantonio, 26 teams still active. And a bunch of teams around that 500 mark, 7-7, 8-6, that are still jockeying for one of those coveted 7 seeds in each conference, including the Thursday night game, the LA Rams hosting the New Orleans Saints. That game has huge playoff implications for those teams. And there's many others here. As we look at Week 16, you get, as I mentioned, the Rams and Saints. Cleveland travels to Houston. These are games that involve both teams are seriously in the playoff hunt. Cleveland is at Houston. Jacksonville is at Tampa Bay. Those teams are going opposite direction. Jacksonville, as I said, I just never believed in the Jaguars, and they're backing that up. The marquee game, I guess, of Sunday, Dallas is at Miami. I want to talk to Sal about the Cowboys because I think they came up very small against Buffalo. And now they travel to Miami, which is every bit as good as Buffalo. It'll be very interesting to see what Cowboys team takes the field there. And then a heavyweight bout and a real potential Super Bowl preview. Baltimore is at San Francisco. The Ravens, I'm not sure how well the Ravens travel in this regard. I think it's to me, it's nearly impossible to beat the 49ers in San Francisco. That is a tall order for the Ravens. So a quick look there at the Week 16 schedule. Xander, if you bring that up, let's see. We've been tracking the last few weeks the teams that the Eagles are jockeying with for seeding position in the NFC. And you can see San Francisco really now, the 49ers, to me, have that number 1 seed locked up. It would take a monumental collapse. And with games remaining against the Commanders at Washington, they're going to win that easy. And then I think they'll beat the Rams. They'll hold serve at home. Going to be almost impossible for anybody to take the number 1 seed from San Francisco. Philadelphia, as I said, they're done that gauntlet now. And Sal was right. He kept appending Seattle into that gauntlet. He was right. The Seahawks, as I told you last week, teams revert to the mean. I thought it was going to – I did not see Seattle as a team that would lose 5 straight games, and they didn't. But, boy, the way they won that game was excruciating for Eagle fans. But the Eagles at this point, Giants twice, and the Cardinals, there's just no excuse for Philadelphia not to finish 3-0 and have a very satisfying 13-4 season. I just can't believe the Eagles will drop one of these 3 games. Anything is possible. That's why they play the games, as Chris Berman says. The Lions still hanging around. Vikings twice, Cowboys. I think the Lions at best are going to go 1-2 out of that. And then you got Dallas. Dallas at Miami, very tough game. Home to the Lions. I think they hold serve there. And then at Washington. I think Dallas has a real good chance to go 2-1, but I think Philadelphia goes 3-0. So I think the Eagles can dig out from that 5 seed, which is where they sit right now. The Cowboys technically sitting in the division lead. All right, Xander, thanks very much. So tonight we're going to talk with Sal Paolantonio. He's going to join me in just a minute or so. We have a ton to go through with him. A quick look back at Seattle, and then a look ahead here to the finish for Philadelphia, and a look at the playoff seeding. We'll do that with Sal in a few minutes. Tim McManus is going to join me at the top of the hour. We're going to discuss the Eagles-Giants game and where Tim sees the Eagles at. I'm always reminded of that Bill Parcells comment, "You are what your record says you are." But the question that comes to mind is, were the Eagles really a 10-1 team, or are they in fact a 10-4 team, which is not a bad record, not a bad record at all in the National Football League. But the Eagles have definitely been on their heels. And it's Monday night, again, a lot of deficiencies exposed in that game for Philadelphia. They're getting some guys back, which is a good thing. But it's a great now part of the schedule. The Eagles reeling now after those 3 losses. Still went 4-3 in that gauntlet and deserve credit for that. But now they get a chance to right the ship the next 3 games. Home against the Giants, home against Arizona, and then at the Giants. I think the Giants are not a 5-9 team in my opinion. I think they're worse than that. I just can't see it. There's a chance the Giants, that last week of the season, it's the old saw, don't let a team hang around. Philly's got to put their foot on their throat and get the hell out of there. I guess anything could happen, but we'll ask a couple of very learned gentlemen what their thoughts are as the Eagles prepare for the New York Giants on Christmas Day. Xander, let's bring this gentleman in here, the host of the NFL Matchup Show. And of course, a veteran of every NFL sideline, Sal Paolantonio. Sal, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling good, Pat. Merry Christmas to you and everybody at JAKIB Media and all the viewers of This Week in Pro Football. All right. 3 weeks left, and it's going to be an intriguing 3 weeks in Philadelphia. I got to tell you that right now.
I think so, Sal. Now we're going to take just a quick look back. As you often point out to me, I know what the name of the show is, but we're going to just look back a second. Sal, the last 3 weeks, the Eagles' offensive points, 19, 13, 17. Just give me your take here. What is grinding down the Eagle offense right now?
Jalen Hurts. I think that's the number one reason. Clearly, if you want to look at big picture, Pat, he's turned the ball over too much. He has got 17 turnovers in 14 games. That's nearly double what he had last year. He's not seeing the field very well. He's not taking what the defense gives him. He's forcing the football. We saw that against Seattle in the fourth quarter, in the second half last week. He had opportunities to move the football down the field and forced it. So I think the number one reason is Jalen Hurts. And Jalen Hurts was right to walk the cat back a little bit, as they like to say in the CIA, and say what he was talking about me when he said the word we. It does start with Jalen Hurts. He knows that. Nick Sirianni knows that. Brian Johnson knows that. He can't turn the ball over like he's doing, and he's got to be able to see the field better and just make the throws that he made last year. That's good enough.
Sal, you were kind enough to send me some quotes from Nick Sirianni from an interview he did with Jeff McClain. And Sirianni mentioned the turnovers. He said that statistically Hurts is playing very similar to last year, except for 2 major areas. He mentioned the turnovers. The other thing he mentioned, Sal, was big plays. Right. What, in your opinion, is preventing the Eagles from gobbling up big chunks of yardage like they did last year?
Well, teams are focusing in on their big playmakers. They're focusing on A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. And Dallas Goedert was out for a while, and he's slowly being reincorporated into the offense. And Jalen Hurts is not pitching the ball to Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell, and he's not seeing the field and just taking what the defense gives him.
Right.
When you do that, it has a cause and effect on what the defense will do.
Right.
And that will open things up for Smith and Brown. He's been almost exclusively targeting the number 1, 2, and 3 receivers on the team. Receivers meaning Dallas Goedert, a tight end.
Right.
So he did take that shot to Quez Watkins. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Quez Watkins never comes down with the jump ball like that.
I know.
It's a low percentage throw. It was a low percentage throw on a double team to A.J. Brown when he had Devontae Smith open. I did not like Nick Sirianni's answer. You got Timmy Mack. On the show, Murderers Row today, Pat, on This Week in Pro Football.
That's
Callahan, Paolantonio, McManus, bang, bang, bang.
Right.
You asked Jimmy Mack the question that he asked Sirianni about that throw to A.J. Brown, and Sirianni's answer, which was, in my view, just not believable. The answer is not believable. You ask him about it.
I will certainly do that, and I appreciate that very much. Sal, you made reference in some other conversations we've had about, the Eagles. Did the Eagles scheme to get guys open, Sal? I mean, I don't know. I know the game pretty well, but it just seems to me like, the 49ers, since Bill Walsh had dark hair, have schemed guys open with crossing patterns and massive amounts of yards after the catch. I just don't see that with Philadelphia. I see those bubble screens to Dallas Goedert where he's asking Devontae Smith to block. It just seems to me a lack of imagination.
This is where I call a timeout on Pat Callahan.
All right.
Pat, you can't compare Bill Walsh to anybody, okay? So relax back there in the studio. We're not going to compare Brian Johnson and Nick Sirianni to Bill Walsh and Joe Gibbs, okay? We're just not.
All right.
So it's not as intricate for sure. Kyle Shanahan learned at the knee of his father, Mike Shanahan, who's a Hall of Fame coach. So these guys run intricate offenses, and the Niners in particular right now have 4 guys who can score from anywhere on the field. The Eagles don't have that.
No. They had it a lot more last year than they do. I mean, they had almost the same personnel, but as we talked about, the big plays just haven't been there. And I think maybe that lies more with number one than with anybody else.
I believe that it does. It's the turnovers. It always comes back to that. I've interviewed Nick Sirianni before games now for 2.5 years, and he always talks to me about winning the double positive. The double positive is turnovers and explosive plays. He preaches that to the team the night before in the hotel, the day of the game before they go out on the field. They got to win the double positives, and he talks to me about that all the time. Turnovers and explosive plays. And both of them are killing the Eagles' offense right now. They just are. If they fix that and they go on, Pat, it's really interesting. If you remember, I think it was the first or second show this year, we were talking about the records, and I said the Eagles are a 12-5 team this year. Yeah. I said I looked at the end of the year schedule, and I said, boy, this is not going to be easy. They're a 12-5 team this year.
Yeah, well, I think they're going to best that. They're going to best it, but it was very prescient of you to even say that.
Well, the thing is, I did say that, but the point of it is that, can they erase the bad feelings of the 3-game losing streak with this 3-game win streak and go in with a positive attitude? If they win 3 in a row and get a home playoff game, they're going to be home sleeping in their own beds, eating their own home cooking for a month. That goes a long way to fixing a team's psyche. It really does.
It does. I mean, just one last word, just to augment what you were saying. Monday night, the Eagles' longest completion to a wide receiver, 17 yards. That's just not going to do it. The Hurts had 143 yards passing in the entire game, and that just speaks very loudly.
Well, we all know what Pete Carroll's defense has been for a quarter of a century, for crying out loud. The safeties play deep. They play cover 2. There's a hole in the middle of the defense. Take the hole in the middle, and they get after the quarterback, and their linebackers are super active and super good. Take the hole in the middle and move the ball downfield. They had a chance to do that at the end of the game. They could have closed it out, but Hurts went for too much. He learned, listen, Hurts is tough, man. He's mentally tough. The team is mentally tough. They get a little bit of a break with this schedule. Now they got to figure out how to just win this game. Don't worry about Arizona or the Giants down the road. Just Christmas night in front of the hometown fans. All the presents are open. The roast beast has been eaten. Sit down and just watch the game and make sure the Eagles close out the Giants. I got a number for you, Pat. Yeah. You know that Tommy DeVito has been sacked the 5th most of any quarterback in 2023, and he's only played 7 games.
There you go.
He's been sacked 35 times in 7 games. He averages, half major, but that's pretty simple math. That's 5 times a game.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, that is, we're going to get now. We're going to segue after this break. We're going to segue to the defensive side of the ball. I want to talk to Sal Pao about that. Also, about whether this is, in fact, a get-well game for Philadelphia. And then we're going to look with Sal around at the playoff seeding and get a take from him on who's rising and who's not rising in both conferences. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Celebrate your victories in style at Spring Mill Country Club. From Eagles wins to baby showers, weddings to birthdays, our picturesque venue is ready to host your special events. Make memories that last a lifetime in our stunning surroundings. Call Spring Mill today at 215-675-6000 and elevate your next event to unforgettable heights. Contact us now to book 215-675-6000.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
Welcome back This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you along with my guest, Sal Paolantonio. Give me a follow on X at TWIPF-Pat. You can follow the network at JAKIB Sports. All right, Sal Pao, you segued into the defensive side of the ball. Before we get to a look at the playoff picture, just a word about this. The Eagles, only 15 takeaways so far this year. That's about 1 per game, tied for 24th. Last year, the Eagles had 70 sacks, Sal. This year, through 15 weeks, 39. To what do you attribute the fall off in the defense's ability to force turnovers and the ability to sack the quarterback?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. I think that the secondary, decimated by injuries, has allowed teams to get open down the field quickly, and that means the ball is coming out much more quickly, and it is. The numbers show that. Quarterbacks are getting rid of the ball much more quickly. So when the ball comes out quick, it's hard for the pass rush to get home.
Right.
That's number one. I think the fact that you had a new defensive coordinator in Sean Desai, and they couldn't quite figure out exactly how to dial up the right pressure at the right time. That's number two. Right. And number three is you've had some injuries on the defensive line that you've had to deal with, and at the linebacker position. I would say the number one issue in the defense has been the mixing and matching because of injuries. Now, Sean Desai was the fall guy. Let's call it what it was. You know, sometimes somebody's got to go. You got to shake things up. I'm not going to fault Nick Sirianni for shaking things up. But the proof is Matt Patricia comes in against Seattle,
right, and
they lose to Drew Lock in the fourth quarter. A fourth quarter come from behind drive that goes the length of the field.
I know.
So, you know, this is not going to be an easy fix for sure. I'm not going to tell Matt Patricia how to coach defense. The guy's coached Super Bowl teams in New England. He knows what he's doing. He's got an aeronautical engineering degree from RPI, for crying out loud. I'm not going to tell him what to do. Right. But, you know, it's going to take some time. I don't know if they're going to be able to fix it or not. But here's a simple way to play complementary football. and this is going to sound oversimplified, you have to do better job of keeping the offense on the field so you don't put so much pressure on the defense.
All right.
You got to convert on third downs.
Right.
You got to eat clock. You
Right.
got to play ball. You got to play field position football, which means you need to be dedicated to the run. And you had an offensive coordinator, first year, Brian Johnson, who admitted that a couple of weeks ago, said not only do we need to run the ball, we need to be dedicated to staying with the run, even if it doesn't work.
Fair enough. All right, Sal, let me posit this to you. Do you see a notable lack of speed amongst the Eagles' back seven, in the secondary and at the linebacker position?
Sure. That's been the big problem.
Right. Right.
Speed.
And that, go ahead.
They're not young enough. They're not fast enough. They're just not good enough to play man-to-man.
Right.
And Matt Patricia plays a lot of man. He played that in New England. That's what Bill Belichick wants to do. But when you don't have those man-to-man cover skill guys with speed, it's hard to do.
Sal, Shaq Leonard so far, now, of course, he's only had, a game and a half of worth of exposure here, but 2 tackles, 4 assists. Were there maybe expectations too high, or do you think it's just a matter of him getting his feet under him?
Yeah, let's take some time there and see if they can figure it out. They've been trying to figure it out, the linebacker and secondary position. Again, I go back to play complementary football. The offense must help the defense.
Right. Okay. All right. Sal, just one more word before we get to this other screen. I want to show you just one other word about this game. I see this, Sal, and I'm a big NFL psychology guy. I think this is a massive get-well game. You know what it reminds me of, Sal? Do you remember years ago the Eagles hosted Arizona? The Eagles got dusted in Baltimore.
Yeah. I remember that. Donovan McNabb got benched in that game.
Exactly correct. And then they came back to face Arizona on a Thursday night game, and the Cardinals didn't even want to get off the plane. And the Eagles just dusted them. I see the same scenario coming up. Give me a quick take on that.
Yeah, remember Andy Reid said sometimes you got to take a step back, take a step forward. That was the famous quote from Big Red about Donovan McNabb, right?
Yeah.
Hey, same is true with Jalen.
Yeah.
You're not going to bench Jalen, but in his mind, he has to understand that the way he's playing, he could have been benched in other circumstances. And he's gone through that before in his career. He's got to step back. He's got to make an honest assessment of how he's been playing, and he's got to fix it along with, what did Nick Sirianni say today? This is my offense.
He did. Yep.
He sounded like Alexander Haig after Watergate.
I'm in charge here. That's correct. Yes. All right, Xander, bring that screen up for me. Sal, I want to start here. This is the playoff picture. You'll excuse my logos right in the way there, but
got to have the logo, Pat. It's all about branding, Sal. Pat. It's about branding.
That's very good. I want to start though with the star on the helmet. Sal, I just sat there just thinking, I'm shaking my head at how poorly they played in Buffalo last week. And I'm becoming now of the camp that says this is a team that's strictly like the Lions. That plays very well when there's a roof over their heads and 90,000 adoring Cowboy fans. Yeah. I don't know about the Cowboys at all. I mean, I think they really lost a lot of goodwill with that performance last week. What's your take on that?
Well, I think you have to look at the matchup. It was, first of all, outdoors in the rain. Buffalo right now leads the NFL in first downs per game. They lead the NFL in third down conversion rate. All I want for Christmas, if I'm an NFL head coach right now, is to not play the Buffalo Bills.
Right.
They are a runaway train.
Right, you are. Right,
Sean McDermott and Josh Allen are coming down the chimney, and they're taking the tree and the roast beast. They're the Grinches right now, stealing your Christmas.
That is true, and they're at the Charger team that doesn't want to.
Yeah. Right. So let's look at Miami now. If you watch Dan Orlovsky at all, and I'm inviting people after you're done watching Pat Callahan and This Week in Pro Football, go on the internet and look at Orlovsky's breakdown on Get Up and NFL Live of exactly what Buffalo did when they ran the football against the light Dallas Cowboys defense, running right at number 14 of the Cowboys.
I saw it, Sal. I was just going to say to you, where you
sometimes the game is simple, Pat.
Right.
When they don't have enough bodies to stop the run, you run it at them, and you keep running at them until they stop you. That's it.
Yep. We just got done saying how the Eagles' defense is a little too slow. The Cowboys' defense is too small. When they're up 38-7, as they were during their hot streak, well, that doesn't matter because
it doesn't matter. Now you look at Miami. Miami is number 1 in rushing yards per carry, 5.1. They're 4th overall running the football. Mostert is one of the best running backs in the NFL. This is an example where you have a young coach, Mike McDaniel. He doesn't have to overthink it. He just has to plug in the tape of that Buffalo game and run it right at the Cowboys and run them right out of South Florida.
All right. That's going to be interesting, Sal. I think you're right. I think you diagnosed that one right. I think Dallas is in for another long day. Okay. Sal, let's take a look. We'll stay in the NFC, the right side of the picture here. And just give me a couple teams including these other seeds that you think are rising in the NFC and are teams that could be heard from before the regular season's over.
I don't see it, Pat. I don't see any teams rising in the NFC. I see teams rising in the AFC. I see teams that can do some damage right now. I think, but in the NFC, I just don't see it. I mean,
one point then. You agree with me then that the Lions, impressive win last week against Denver, but I didn't take that. I did not change my opinion of the Lions as an indoor hothouse team and a team that's I don't think is positioned to make a deep run.
Well, I think they have one of the best young offensive coordinators in Ben Johnson. They will spread you out and go 5 wide 70% of the time. So they make you defend the entire field, but that only works when the crowd is nice and quiet. The temperature, the temperature is climate controlled by somebody in some office somewhere. That's where that works. That's not going to work. That's not going to work in Buffalo, or they don't have to play Buffalo. But I mean, it's definitely not going to work in South Philadelphia. I can tell you that right now.
Okay. All right, Sal. Now the AFC. You did mention there's a couple of teams. You mentioned one specifically, Buffalo, which is right now the 9 seed. Is there
Buffalo? I think Buffalo wins out and they win the division. I think they win out and win the division. I mean, the only way that they can stop Buffalo is Buffalo stops itself.
Right.
And Josh Allen goes on one of those streaks where he's turning the football over. I don't see it with the new offensive coordinator. I think he's got him under control. Buffalo wins out and wins the division. Kansas City is still there.
Yeah,
they're still there, Pat.
Just going to say that, Sal. I would never count the Chiefs out. Never. I agree.
And I'm anxious to see how Baltimore does on the road and how the Dolphins just close out the Cowboys this week. But the one team that I have my eye on the road this week is the Cleveland Browns.
All right.
Because Flacco's in one of those grooves.
Right.
And Jim Schwartz and that defense is real, totally real, 100%. They'll shut you down in a heartbeat.
Great pickup by the Browns there, grabbing Flacco. That was
Joe Flacco, Audubon, New Jersey, baby.
Saved their season. But I always thought Sal Flacco threw one of the nicest spirals. He throws a ball like Warren Moon. He throws a ball tight spiral, and it gets where it's going in a hurry. And he's been a season saver. Went
to New England in the playoffs and beat Belichick and Brady and the Patriots on his way to winning the Super Bowl.
And he really should have beat him the season before, but the guy dropped a touchdown pass, which would have won the game. Yeah. They missed a field goal. But
walking his dog right before Thanksgiving dinner, Pat. Out there walking the dog.
There you go.
Watching the games and walking the dog. Hello? Right. Hey, yeah. Kevin Stefanski, your old friend.
Yeah, how about that?
Come on and join us. Let's go to the playoffs together. All right, here I come.
Sal Pal, the matchup show coming up this weekend. Obviously, as everything tightens up and the games get much more important, that's a show that nobody can miss. So what's on tap there?
Oh, yeah. We got a great show for you this week, Pat. Darius Butler, Greg Cosell. We're going to break down the big games, obviously, Baltimore and San Francisco, Miami, and Dallas. And don't forget, all over the Delaware Valley, there are signed copies of Philly Special in the Barnes & Noble. If you're looking for that last-minute Christmas stocking stuffer, Pat.
Yeah. Excellent. Signed copy. There's no better gift. Signed copy, Philly Special. A great book by Sal. Make sure you check that out. Sal, I hope you don't have to work Christmas Day, do you? I guess they're
Pat.
They're dragooning you out there.
Yeah, I don't know why they do it, but they put Christmas in the middle of the football season. It's crazy.
All right. Well, listen, Sal Paolantonio, Merry Christmas to you and to Mrs. Sal and to everybody else in that family. And look forward to seeing your stuff over the weekend. And we'll talk to you next week. It's going to get even hotter. All right.
All right, Pat.
All right. Sal Paolantonio joining me there. Thank you very much to Sal. Great segment there. A lot to discern. We'll do some of that with my next guest. Sean Green's going to be joining me. We're going to talk Eagle Giants. We're going to talk Cowboys, Dolphins, and a little Rams Saints as we take a look at the ledger side of the National Football League. We'll do that next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by
Discover the essence of true community banking with First Bank, your trusted partner across eastern Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Their network of branches brings you convenient access to dedicated personal bankers who understand your unique needs. At First Bank, you're not just a customer, you're a valued member of the community. But that's not all. They are excited to join forces with another pillar of the community banking world in eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank. Their team of professionals will fit seamlessly into First Bank's culture of dedication and understanding your financial aspirations to fuel your success. With a deep-rooted commitment to eastern Pennsylvania, Malvern Bank stands as a testament to community values and unwavering support. Experience the difference of real relationships and dedicated personal bankers. Connect with any member of the team today at our Westchester office, conveniently located at 849 Paoli Pike, or you can call them directly at 484-881-3800. First Bank is an equal opportunity lender and member FDIC. At Whistler Pearlstein LLP, we assemble the most effective team to handle all of your legal needs. There are players and pretenders, but our hustle and heart set us apart. In practice now for over 75 years, we're proud to be one of the most prominent full-service law firms in the Philadelphia region. We offer 17 different areas of practice, including business, corporate, and tax education law, real estate, zoning, and land development, municipal law, and litigation. Our top-rated attorneys and staff are laser-focused on client success. We strive to provide outstanding legal counsel with the highest level of care and consideration. Let us show you the Whistler way. Learn more at WhistlerPearlstein.com or email Michael J. O'Donohue at mod@whistpearl.com. WhistlerPearlstein.com or mod@whistpearl.com.
I want to be a game changer in construction. I want to be able to provide diversity in the workforce, and it starts at the top. I started Rodriguez Construction Group in 2013 with 2 employees, and we're 85 strong today. M&T has been a great partner since day one, providing us the access, the opportunity, the funding to be able to continue our growth. We can change the community in a positive way, one person at a time, one job at a time, and one family at a time. I think M&T Bank is very committed to the community, just like us.
Welcome back. This Week in Pro Football. Pat Callahan joining you. And let's get this guy up here, Xander. That would be the proprietor of the Sports Gambling Podcast, the great Sean Green. Sean, how you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, back east here, hanging out for the holidays. But yeah, can't complain. I mean,
we're back east. Look at you.
Yeah, hanging out, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Very good. Sean Green back on the East Coast. I'm surprised that wasn't like on Fox News. I got to go back and find out. There should have been. I should have gotten
breaking news. Yes,
that's right. Breaking news. That's right. Green touches down. Well, it's nice to have you back. Anyway, Merry Christmas to you and to the family. All right, that's enough of that. Let's get down to business, Sean.
Yeah.
What is the smart money saying right now about the Philadelphia Eagles? A 3-game losing streak right now. They're kind of on their heels, certainly, but what looks like a very easy finish. What's the word?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, you look at their odds to win the Super Bowl, they're still not crazy. It's plus 850, even though I know as an Eagles fan, the Eagles world, everyone's like, the season's over. We got no shot. The market doesn't quite see that. I think the market actually thinks, like the Eagles versus the Giants, the spread opened up at like 11 points, 10.5 points. It's now up to 13.5. So certainly there are plenty of people backing Eagles to come back against the Giants in particular this week. And they still think they have a decent shot, at least odds wise, compared to some of the other teams in the NFC. I mean, yeah, they've looked pretty bad here these past 3 weeks, but I would open it up to say, with the exception of the San Francisco 49ers, who really is a dominant team right now in the NFL? I feel like in the NFC, it's still wide open minus the 49ers. And then in the AFC, it's super wide open. So I think a lot of teams have a chance to get hot here and close late. Eagles are certainly one of them. Now, will they? They certainly haven't shown any signs these past few games, but they are a talent. They are a very talented team. So they have the opportunity.
All right. Let me hit you with another team that was everybody was in love with, and I'm sure the smart money was saying that this team is on the rise, and they're just laying people out, and then they go to Buffalo and literally get punched in the face. What is the take right now as the Cowboys head into Miami on Dallas?
Well, if you were listening to the Sports Gambling Podcast, I did lock up the Bills last week. Love that situation spot for the Bills. One, the Bills were like a desperate team. They're at home, playing good football after their win against the Chiefs. And two, this Cowboys team is a completely different team on the road and at home. So again, why it is so important if you're an Eagles fan or an Eagles backer to win that NFC East. So if you do end up playing the Cowboys, you at least play them at home in Lincoln Financial Field. So yeah, I think, certainly the biggest change in the market was the Dak MVP price. I tried to talk people off of it at he was like plus 125 to win the MVP going into that game. And I said, don't do it, because if he wins, the price isn't going to go much lower. But if he loses, you're really going to bottom out on price. And people, assume I'm a hater, which I am, but, it was certainly not a good time to hop in on the Dak MVP price.
Well, I'll tell you, Sean, I'm not a hater of the Cowboys. I'm just not. But I was disgusted with their performance against Buffalo. Yeah. I just thought it was an absolutely atrocious performance. And whatever goodwill the Cowboys had built up over that nice run they had was blown away when they faced an opponent that was really ready to punch them. And as Sal pointed out, Dan Orlovsky of ESPN had a very damning segment in how to beat the Cowboys defense, which to me is undersized. And I think they're for a dose of Raheem Mostert on Sunday. I love Miami in that game, but I guess we'll start with that one. Are you on Miami's side too in that one? And what's the number right now?
Yeah, I'm seeing. I'll double check it, but I was seeing like 1.5. I don't think it's
Miami. Yeah, that's right. Miami 1.5 for Miami 1 even. Wait, to tell you the truth, Sean, I'm a little surprised. I thought it'd be a bigger number.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting the way you stop the Miami Dolphins. Everyone's going to talk about Tyreek Hill and Waddle and their high flying passing attack, but really you stop them by stopping the running game. And you mentioned Raheem Mostert. If Raheem Mostert can have a good game, man, it opens things up so much for that Miami Dolphins offense. And, I got Raheem Mostert in fantasy, and that's why we're in the fantasy playoffs, is because of Raheem Mostert.
20 touchdowns this year, and the number of touchdowns that guy has scored out of pure happenstance is beyond good. The Jets game, all of a sudden, the Jets turned the ball over 2 times inside the 10-yard line, 2 touchdowns from Mostert, and it's just incredible how that happens. Mostert.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Jamal Williams last year, where he out of nowhere just got a ton of touchdowns.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, if Mostert and Achane can get going against this Cowboys defense, which I think they can, it makes that play action impossible. And the Cowboys run a ton of man defense.
I agree.
Which is not what you want to be running against the Miami Dolphins, because no one can cover Tyreek Hill one-on-one, let alone Jalen Waddle either. So I think they're going to have their hands full defensively. Back-to-back road spots, always tough.
Yeah. Just an interesting thing, though. One note about that game. If Prescott hits Brandon Cooks early, remember that bomb he threw to him the first time Dallas had the ball? He overthrew it by about 3 or 4 yards. If he hits him, you might have a totally different situation there. But once the Cowboys jogged off the field, basically with a 3 and out, you could just see that all that goodwill built up over 4 to 5 weeks was now checked.
And another play when they roughed the kicker and they gave the Bills their punter that free first down. Same kind of thing, right? There's always a couple of those plays.
I know, you're right. And inexplicable. That guy, he almost could have picked that punter up and carried him into the end zone. He was there, but he doesn't flatten out. Instead, he stands straight up, and you're exactly right. Just brutal. But okay. Thursday Night Football, Rams and Saints, Sean. This is a huge game for both teams, but the Rams in particular, if they win, 75% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose, 7. Do you have any thoughts about this one? The Rams, I understand, are about a 2.5 or 3-point favorite, right? Or maybe as much as 4.
Yeah, it was sitting around 4. You can find some 3.5s out there. I would lay the points here with the Rams on Thursday Night Football. I just Stafford is playing really well, and I think they can attack this Saints defense. I'm still pretty skeptical of the Saints in general and Derek Carr. I think they've looked okay these past couple of weeks because they're at home playing Carolina, the Giants and the Panthers. Right. So and this Rams team has some pretty good mojo going for them overall. I would say prop wise, what's interesting is the tight ends for the Saints against the Rams. Rams struggle a little bit with the tight ends, especially on the touchdowns. And back from the dead, Jimmy Graham has had 3. Yeah, he's had 4 catches this season. All 4 catches have gone for touchdowns. So including the past 3 games. So he's a fun anytime touchdown bet at like 5-1. Okay. Prop wise, if you're looking for a little spicy play there, Pat.
All right, Christmas Day, Sean. The Eagles hosting the Giants, as you said, the number's now up to 13. I attribute that, Sean, to I think a lot of people think this is going to be a blowout. The analogy I used with Sal Paolantonio was, if you remember this, this is many, many years ago. The Eagles, when Andy Reid was coach, went down to Baltimore and got waxed by the Ravens, and then the next week played Arizona at home and just killed them. And I think this is the same thing coming up here. Is that what Vegas is seeing? And do you come down on the Eagles side, even though that's a big number?
Yeah, I mean, I never like to lay a bunch of points like that in a division game. But, I mean, historically, the Eagles have owned the Giants. I mean, even when the Giants were winning Super Bowls with Eli Manning, basically since Andy Reid on, the Eagles have really owned the Giants. So I will take the Eagles over the Giants. I got a 31-17. Although this could get squirrely. I think one thing you got to keep an eye on is the Giants and Wink Martindale love to blitz, and the Eagles have had some issues picking up the blitz, getting rid of the ball quick. So they got to be prepared for that. If they're not, they could get in trouble. But, yeah, I will take the Eagles 31-17.
All right, all-time record here, Eagles and Giants. The Eagles lead the series now 89-85. These two teams are very familiar with the other. I think the Eagles are going to kill them. I don't think the Giants are a 5-9 team, Sean.
Yeah.
I don't think they're as good as their record says they are. I think this is a team that has a Stone Age offense, and I think the Eagles get well here on Christmas Day. One note I'm seeing here, and I'll attribute this to John McMullen here on Twitter. Devonta Smith did not practice today. He apparently tweaked his knee against Seattle. Does that change your mind at all if he is limited or doesn't go Monday?
That's certainly interesting for the props. I mean, if he doesn't go, I still think they can get a win. I mean, the problem with them isn't having guys open in the passing game. It's getting it to them in time. Finding that open guy. Like I think they'll, even without Devonta Smith, if he doesn't play, I think they're fine. Prop wise, I do think Julio Jones to score a touchdown is another fun long shot bet. You can get that at 7-1. I know. This is a funny gambling story. So everyone knows that Boston Scott, all he does is score touchdowns against against the Giants. Even though he hasn't really been playing much, his touchdown price was 11-1 when they opened it earlier in the week. Right now, it has been bet down to 3-1. Everyone is betting Boston Scott to score a touchdown. So if you think
I have Kenny Gainwell on my fantasy team, and I was thinking of actually using him because I think the Eagles are going to kill them, and I think this guy's going to get some garbage TDs. But now you bring up a wrinkle that says maybe he's not going to get him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Boston Scott, his numbers against the Giants are crazy. It always scares me when everyone is on the same betting trend and, the conspiratorial brain gets going. But I would say what makes me think it does still have a chance is that the coaches are aware of Boston Scott versus the Giants, Boston Scott getting touchdowns against the Giants. So I think what you might be able to find a better price at if you want the Boston Scott stuff is either Boston Scott first touchdown, like maybe they get him in there near the goal line, or Boston Scott last touchdown could be a fun way to play that.
Maybe so, Sean. But yeah, what's the number on Jalen Hurts now? Anytime. What is it?
Yeah, I mean,
you got to put up about 1,800 to win 100. I guess it's ridiculous. I mean, if Boston Scott's not going to score any touchdowns when that ball gets inside the 5.
No, you're right. I mean, and that's the other thing. Like every time I come on the show and you're like, what Eagles props do you like? I go, well, first off, Jalen Hurts to score a touchdown.
Correct. Yeah.
And even now at minus 180, you have to bet 180 to win 100. I still think it's a pretty solid bet.
I think it's a lock. It's a lock. Other than that, you're right. It's a little shaky. But
yes,
it's ridiculous. But okay. All right, listen, Sean Green, where does everybody find you now that you're here this weekend? I guess you're doing everything but remote. But if anybody this weekend wants to see what Sean Green is up to, how do they check you out?
Yeah, just type in Sports Gambling Podcast on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, or sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Can't miss us. Just type in Sports Gambling Podcast. We're there. Appreciate it, Pat. Happy holidays.
So Merry Christmas to you, pal.
Merry Christmas.
Next week, all right?
All right. Take it easy, man.
All right, Sean Green joining me there. Next up, we're going to talk some fantasy. We're going to have Justin Bruni. Don't forget Tim McManus coming up at the top of the hour. We're going to talk with Tim, obviously, about this Eagles game and get his take on what's going on with number 1 in that huddle of the Philadelphia Eagles offense. I also want to talk to Tim about that, the Eagles defense. Remember, a week or so ago, he wrote a piece for ESPN.com about the 5 things the Eagles needed to do to get themselves straightened out. And I'm going to bring that back up with him and see how many of those he thinks they're going to get accomplished. But next up, Justin Bruni will join me. We'll talk some fantasy. It's either semifinal or championship week for most of you. And we'll see what Justin can add to that on This Week of Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
If you own a company and you're not producing a podcast, you're missing out. The public consumes messaging when they're ready. Join the professional podcast network of companies and let JAKIB Media Partners put you in the podcast arena. Come to our professional studio, or we'll come to your place of business and professionally produce your company podcast. Call JAKIB Media right now at 267-261-3428. 267-261-3428.
John Kennedy Ford. Their reputation sounded too good to be true, so my partner and I decided to do a little digging.
They know we can see them, right?
We could get them a great deal if they just come inside.
They made us. Run! Uncovering a better car buying experience is easy at John Kennedy Ford. Enjoy your ride.
Johnny Apple's restaurant and bar opened in 2001 and for over 20 years has been serving great food and good times to Bucks County residents, friends, and family. Ideally located at 184 Buck Road in Holland, Johnny Apple's offers a terrific array of steaks, seafood, and daily specials. They also host private parties and affairs of any size. For excellent food, great company, and a relaxed lunch or dinner, check out Johnny Apple's restaurant at 215-953-9900 or at johnnyapplesrestaurant.com.
Back on This Week in Pro Football, Sean Green presented, by the way, by the great folks at Live Hotel, Restaurant, and Casino. And this gentleman presented by the good folks at Concrete Cutting Systems here in Philadelphia. That would be Justin Bruni from the Sports Gambling Podcast. Always great to have Justin on now, especially as we talk about semifinals or finals or whatever the hell anybody's doing. I'm out. I got blitzed last week, Justin, because I loaded up on my Cowboys, and oh my God. I mean,
Sorry,
Dak, I had Prescott, I had the kicker, and their defense was atrocious.
Not wrong. You're not wrong. I lost a playoff matchup last week by 3 points because of Dak Prescott, someone who had carried me, to the playoffs with elite production.
You must have.
I lose by 3 on his worst scoring week of the season.
You must have wanted to throw your TV out the window when they got to the 2-yard line. But you know what, Justin? I knew it. I said to my wife, because we were watching the game, and I said, this is going to be a run. This is going to be a run. And sure enough, he does a run with CD Lamb. I mean, if you're going to do it, just do that forward pitch, where the guy cuts it.
Right.
Pitch it to him. You get a touchdown.
Give me the attempt. Give me the attempt. What are you going to do? Tough luck. I lost another one. You guys were talking Eagles on the show. DeAndre Swift at the 1. I lost by 0.06. And I just needed either a yard or a touchdown.
Oh my God, Justin. Well, I mean, I'm not surprised given the number of leagues you're in, but
exactly
they are just excruciating, those kind of losses. Because with the Eagles, I was just talking to Sean Green about it. If the Eagles get the ball to the 2, you can forget it. If you don't have Jalen Hurts, you're getting nothing out of that.
Exactly.
Touchdown. You're right. But all right, let me start with that, because we were talking at the end here. I was going to throw Kenny Gainwell in because I think, this is a game the Eagles are going to rout the Giants. I'm going to get some garbage time out of him. Now I'm hearing this Boston Scott talk. Where do you come down on this?
I'm not starting Boston Scott or Gainwell in fantasy. I think they are fun options for betting props like you guys were discussing. Right. But Gainwell has not exceeded more than 10 fantasy points in any game this season, even when scoring a touchdown. You're chasing the highest ceilings. You want to live on to fight another day. You're not putting players in your lineup just because you think they might have a safe floor. This is the time not to put out all of your guys. I don't consider Gainwell or Boston Scott a big hitter for fantasy. I do like DeAndre Swift this week. The Giants have allowed the 12th most fantasy points to running backs, but I just see Swift still playing the most snaps, even if the Eagles were to rout the Giants, like really to put a dent in on them and score a lot of points. I still see Swift having the most upside, the running back that I would bet per se to say score 2 touchdowns. I would still bet DeAndre Swift to be that guy over Boston Scott, even though Boston Scott does eat Giants for breakfast. I get it. I love the narrative. It is a fun topic to talk about, but when it's fantasy, I'm putting out DeAndre Swift in that group. Good matchup for him this week. Had a lot of carries last week. Still productive on a per touch basis. Just gotta hope Jalen doesn't steal one inside the 5, like you said.
Justin, Devon A-Chain, Tyler, and Tyreek Hill back practicing now in Miami. I guess after what we saw last week, I assume there's not a Dolphin on your bench this week.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Jeff Wilson Jr., if you're stashing some players, but yeah, you're still firing up Jalen Waddle. There isn't a week that you're going to sit him even with Tyreek Hill starting. He's just that good. Obviously, we saw that last week with Hill out of the lineup. I was loving some of the play calling anecdotes from Mike McDaniel from that game, how they're going to have a 1-play drive with Jalen Waddle, and they did exactly that from their own 40. I love all that good stuff. But yeah, you're firing up Mostert, A-Chan, Hill, Waddle. You're not blinking at Dolphins. Vice versa, when you're looking at the Cowboys, I do look at a nice bounce back week for Dak. So if you were somehow able to, survive the apocalypse that is Dakota Prescott from week 15, and he's still keeping you alive for week 16, I do like to start him despite the strength of the Dolphins secondary. I see this still being a big game for the Cowboys, now being right there with the Eagles. I think that they are going to be, again, looking to bounce back big. So, you're never sitting Lamb. I will trust Pollard, given his stature among the running back position. There just isn't that many guys that you can just grab off the waiver wire. So I feel like a lot of fantasy owners are kind of stuck starting Pollard. I will also fire up Brandon Cooks, who has become a little bit more quiet. I see this being more of a high-scoring game.
All right. I think it's a massive game for Dallas, Justin. I really do. And I'm not even talking fantasy. I think this is a game where the Cowboys have got to show that they can go toe-to-toe with an NFL heavyweight on the road. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. All right, a couple of names I wanted to run by you here, Justin. Jamar Chase out for Cincinnati. T. Higgins has been absolutely anonymous all season. Do you think this is a T. Higgins week? Do you not trust him? I haven't trusted. I have Tyler Boyd, haven't used him all season. Give me your thoughts on the receivers.
Yeah, this is a great situation. Jamar Chase left that game, so there's still some production that would have gone to other receivers or tight ends. So I'm starting T. Higgins, who is a wide receiver 1 on any other team if he doesn't play with Jamar Chase. And I'm starting Tanner Hudson. He's been a nice piece at the tight end position that's come along here in the last handful of weeks. And absolutely starting Tyler Boyd. Give me Joe Mixon. The only thing I don't like about this game is they're playing it in Pittsburgh in December. It's not going to be very fun for a backup quarterback with not a lot of experience, but I expect him to throw the ball a lot. I expect this to be a quasi-competitive game. You're going to get a new quarterback with Mason Rudolph on the other side. I don't necessarily love the Steelers, but I think that this is going to be more of a competitive game than people think.
I don't know, Justin. I think it will be. I think you're right about that. The trouble is it's going to be 9-6. That's how that
maybe
game goes.
Maybe
it's just you go to play in Pittsburgh, offense goes to die. That's the way it is.
True. That's true. They have been good there. They are good in cold weather. Love Mike Tomlin there in December. Anytime if I'm betting on that game, I'm gonna have a tough decision. It'll come down to the wire. But again, I do like the Bengals players a lot more than say the Steelers because Browning has just been excellent. Like he's someone that I am fully comfortable starting. If I need to. He threw the ball 42 times last week. I think the one league I own him in, he got me 27 fantasy points. So I was very pleased.
All right. I told you last week, if I may be so immodest, that I thought the Lions would have a bounce back and Jared Goff safely back in his garage again for 5 touchdowns. Now they're on the road, albeit in another garage in Minnesota. Are you trusting Goff on the road?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is just a situation when you're looking at the quarterback landscape, there's not going to be a lot of guys that you can start over Jared Goff. He is going to be playing indoors again. I don't expect he'll have a repeat of week 15, but I'm expecting him to throw at least 2 or 3 passing touchdowns. I think that no matter what you're starting, Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, the running backs are obviously a little bit more difficult. You haven't really been able to pick who's going to boom which week or not. And as I've told you multiple times this season, I start both of those guys on the same fantasy team. That team is still rolling. They're still going in the playoffs. So I'm going to fire up both of them and continue to hope for the best. I see both of them having a reliable role. And I don't think the Vikings are that amazing. I think they've had some nice recent success the past few weeks, but I don't see them as some powerhouse. I don't see them, getting to Jared Goff with consistency. I don't see them forcing turnovers on defense like the Bears were doing to Jared Goff. So I think you trust your Lions in this one.
A terrible loss, Justin, for Minnesota last week. They had that game won, especially in overtime. And for Nick Mullins, to not get what was basically about 3 inches on that 4th down play.
It's tough.
Oh, my God. That's a terrible way to lose if you're the Vikings. But you're right. That's it. But, as I said with Dallas, Justin, this is a statement game for Detroit. The Lions, everybody knows. You get them in Detroit, that's a tough out. Let's see if Detroit can do it when they're not at Ford Field. One last thing, Justin. Is there any Buffalo Bill you are not playing this week indoors against the LA Chargers, who the golf clubs are not only in the trunk, they're in the back seat. That's how close the Chargers are to wanting to get the season over with.
I'm going to say you probably start all of them. Yeah. I mean, Gabe Davis would be the name that you would kind of consider, but he has a great matchup this week.
That level. Yeah. You're looking maybe to load up even with a Gabe Davis or someone like that.
Yeah. The Chargers have allowed, the third most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So, Stephon Diggs, he's going to eat. He's going to get some major production this week. I expect Gabe Davis to be in line for a touchdown.
And I think also
in a minute.
I think Buffalo's defense is probably a top 3 defense this week. Real shutout potential there against Easton.
Potentially. I mean, they were able to score some points on the Raiders last week, being down an astronomical amount of points at halftime, which was just crazy to see.
Can you imagine that, Justin? The Raiders the week before put up 0 against a good but not great Minnesota defense. Put up 0. And then
I had the under 35 points, Pat. Yeah. I know. It was not great.
42 points in the first half against the Chargers. That was terrible. What a terrible effort by the LA Chargers in that particular Thursday night game. All right, Justin, I'll be hounding you. I'm out of I lost on the head-to-head, but I'm still trying to hang on in this point race. So I'll be hounding you Sunday.
All right.
Everybody find you.
At SGPNJB on the X, on the old Twitter machine. And you can find us on the YouTube channel at SGPN Fantasy Football. Stop on by.
All right, Justin, this is it for you and me for this season. After this, I'm back this week. I'm going to be done with this damn fantasy football. That's enough. But I appreciate your efforts all season long. It was great having you on. For your information was top notch. And Merry Christmas to you, and look forward to talking to you again in the off season. All right.
Can't wait. Thank you again. Really appreciate the opportunity, and Merry Christmas to you and your team at JAKIB Sports. Appreciate you guys.
Right, thanks very much, pal. We'll talk to you soon. All right, listen, we get back here to wrap up this week in pro football. My old radio buddy Tim McManus is going to join me, and we are going to talk about the Eagles on both sides of the ball and this 3-game finish that they have. We'll do that to wrap up this week in pro football, presented by Kennedy Ford.
Anything can happen when you go live. I got everything you need. No trouble, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene. Yeah, don't mean a thing. Snap your fingers and I'm on the scene. Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia, voted best casino in Pennsylvania.
Concrete Cutting Systems Incorporated, the concrete cutting specialists in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. These guys are celebrating their 28th anniversary as the industry leader in the field of concrete cutting and robotic demolition. Any type of concrete cutting or drilling, concrete demolition or interior excavating, call the specialists. Concrete Cutting Systems. They're the only full union concrete cutting company based in Philadelphia. Call the guys today at 215-533-0652. The website is concretecuttingsystems.net. Let's go Eagles.
Evolution Energy Partners has helped hundreds of businesses save millions of dollars on their energy spend. They offer electricity and gas procurement strategies, efficiency audits and engineering and financing solutions, as well as online utility bill management. To learn how your business can save, visit www.evolutionep.com or contact Chuck Herschella at 610-329-8288. Evolution Energy Partners, energy solutions to improve your bottom line.
Hi, welcome back to a Week 16 edition of This Week in Pro Football. Everybody gets ready for Christmas. All my shopping is done. I'll bet this guy's shopping is also done because he's just such a busy man. He doesn't have time for this kind of frivolity, and that is from ESPN, who covers the Eagles and has done so extremely well for many, many years. That's Tim McManus. Tim, how you doing, pal?
When you don't have any Christmas shopping, you don't have any more to do. That's, you gotta,
there you go.
Thank God for the wife.
You had to shop for Mrs. McManus. Now, don't forget that. Now, I expect you better load up, Tim.
That's right.
For them, all right? Let's not you can't delegate that now. All right, but thanks very much for joining me. And let me look back with you just for a minute or so, Tim, to that Monday night game. Sal Pao insisted that I ask you to recount for my audience here the question you posited to Nick Sirianni about that last pass that Jalen Hurts threw, and an answer that Sal said was very unsatisfactory.
Yeah, and it has a lot of people losing their minds. So basically, I just asked him, was A.J. Brown the primary read there, and what was the thinking of tossing it downfield when you still had a couple timeouts and you only needed like 15 yards to get into Jake Elliott's field goal range? And he said he started off the response by saying that in those situations, oftentimes you can draw a pass interference.
Right.
And so that was part of the equation for them of thinking, okay, we've done that before. We've taken shots. I think one of them was against the Rams. You draw the PI and you get Elliott into deeper field goal territory. But, as many people have pointed out, the thinking was kind of flawed. Like, you just didn't need to take that kind of risk, especially when you consider, number one, they were playing in elements as they have been for a number of games this year. Jalen Hurts was sick. And you saw, Pat, that he really wasn't on all night. Like he had a tough time. It was very erratic and sluggish through the air. So why would you take a gamble in that kind of situation where Hurts is sick and he's not performing well in that spot when all you needed was, one or two completions that netted 15 yards, and then you have the most clutch kicker that you've ever had or that is in the NFL to at least get you to overtime. And so, yeah, that was part of the thinking. And, as Sal points out, it's flawed.
All right. Well, I wanted to circle back a couple weeks ago. Very prescient of you. You wrote a piece on ESPN.com in which you laid out 5 things the Eagles needed to do better to get the ship righted. And after that Seattle game, I figured I dug these notes out because, and I want to start with this, Tim. You mentioned the offensive game plan. Well, you just described an element in the Eagles' offensive game plan, and I talked to Sal about this at length earlier in the show, is the Eagles' passing game just seems broken, Tim. You know what I mean? I asked Sal, did the Eagles scheme to get these guys open, or is it just go beat your man and I'll throw it to you? But the Eagles don't appear to have fixed their passing game right now. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it was in the sharpest contrast when they went up against the Niners. And you see the way that Shanahan, not only does he have good skill position players, right? He's got Christian McCaffrey and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. And yet he doesn't just rely on them creating one-on-ones and getting open that way. He's using motion and he's using misdirection in order to spring guys loose. And then you see what the Eagles are doing. And there's not a whole lot of that. In fact, if you look like some of those next level metrics surrounding quarterback throws, like Hurts is, it's like more laborious for Hurts than it is for a whole lot of other quarterbacks around the league in terms of wide receivers gaining separation, the tight windows that he has to throw in, and those kind of things, which doesn't make sense because he's throwing to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert, who are very capable at creating separation and are two of some of the best receiving options that you have in the league. It goes back to the point that the offensive play caller and designers right now are failing the Eagles offensively. I think that the defense has absolutely across the league have caught up to what the Eagles are doing. Jalen Hurts isn't using his legs as much as a weapon, which is also limiting them. And the creativity has been lacking, Pat. You just can't get left behind in this league offensively. You can't rely on the same old stuff and expect the same results. The defensive coordinators in the NFL are too good. Just look at what happened to Chip Kelly. Remember when he came in, gangbusters, offense couldn't be stopped. The greatest, the next best thing to the greatest show on turf. Right. And 1 year later, the defense is like, yep, got it.
Get this guy out of town. That's the truth. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, Tim, and your 5 things you mentioned, one was the third down defense, another was red zone defense. Let me broaden it, though. Just defensively speaking with the Eagles, they've not been forcing turnovers, Tim, and their sacks are way down. Now, Sal gave his take on why the sacks are down. Let me ask you this. Is part of the reason why the Eagles, who had 70 sacks last year and have only 39 this year, is it because they're not way ahead in many of the games they've played this year? And as a result, the front four has not been able to tee off.
Yeah, that's part of it. They're not building up those leads, and they have a knack of getting into these third and shorts as opposed to 3rd and long where you can really pin your ears back. That's something that Fletcher Cox had cited to me in the locker room a couple of weeks ago as to why it's not happening. But I think there's a couple different things going on here. Number one, you've started to see the reps for a lot of these players really add up. And as a result of that, like, guys seem like they're more gassed than they were at the beginning of the season. They also traded like Derek Barnett, dropped Derek Barnett, traded Contavious Street. So the depth at defensive line is not there anymore. And two of the guys that you're relying on, and Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, aren't used to playing this amount of snaps. Fletcher Cox is an older guy. You're not getting relief for Josh Sweat as much as you would, or Hassan Reddick. So I think that's part of it. And then they always say that the pass rush helps out the secondary and vice versa. And especially, under Sean Desai, they were playing a lot of soft coverage. I don't think that they were, making it as hard as they needed to for opposing quarterbacks. And so they were able to evade the rush before it got there and get the ball out of their hands. So there's, it's kind of like a failure on all levels leads to that dramatic dip that we've seen from 2022 to this year.
All right. A colleague of yours and Bill Parcells, a guy that did you ever have to interview him? Did you ever come in contact with Bill?
No, I've never interviewed him. No.
I bet you he's a tough interview, Tim. He strikes me as somebody that
I've interviewed Belichick, so that's close. I guess.
Oh my God, you interviewed Belichick. Did you see him at that press conference? It was like a week or so ago. He walks into the press conference. He looked like basically, he was hoping somebody would hand him $1 for a cup of coffee. He can't wait to get this season over. Let me go back to Parcells.
Yeah.
Bill Parcells' famous axiom: you are what your record says you are, right? Now the Eagles are 10-4. I think, Tim, they're going to run the table. I just don't see that they don't defeat the Giants twice and defeat Arizona. But give me your take here. Are the Eagles a 10-4 team? And do you see them, in fact, becoming a 13-4 team by the time the season's over?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Parcells' axiom really holds up in this particular case. I mean, of course, you go to the standings. Are they 10-4? Yes, they're 10-4. But there's underlying numbers that even when they were 8-1 or 10-1, that you still were looking at it. It's like, well, this doesn't look quite right, and that's like the turnover differential. Like going into last week, they were -4. It's like that's not really emblematic of a team that has a winning record like that, or like they only had going into last week a +21 point differential. Right. It's like, and then you start looking at the defensive numbers and it's like, all right, 32nd in the NFL in third down situations, 30th in red zone. They've given up the second most passing touchdowns in the NFL. And you're starting to look at that and it's like, that doesn't feel okay. Maybe you can get by and be a playoff team, but that does not feel like a championship caliber team. That's not what it usually looks like. It usually looks like what it did last year, where you're smoking teams, where you're dominant, where it's pretty clear like who the alpha is on that field. And the Eagles have been in a lot of tussles this year. The schedule obviously is harder, but they haven't been nearly as efficient or as dominant as they were a year ago. And I'm not convinced they're going to run the table. I know they should.
Right.
Yeah, they got 2 games against Tommy DeVito and they got Jonathan Gannon coming in and sandwiched in between there. They're not good teams, but man, I mean, how much faith do you have in them right now, Pat?
It's a fair comment, Tim. It's just that, I used to bore the hell out of you with my psychology talk when we were on the radio together. But I think in this case, I think they're gonna boat race the Giants Sunday, because the Giants, to me, Tim, talking about your record, you are what your record says you are. I don't think the Giants are a 5-9 team. I think they're 2 games worse than that. I think this whole Tommy DeVito thing is ridiculous. If he was Greek or Irish, you wouldn't even know he played quarterback for the Giants. So I think the Eagles are gonna kick the hell out of them Sunday. And then Arizona. Now that's an interesting one. Arizona is a team, Tim, that if you let them hang around, now you could have trouble, because if they get interested in the game, you may be right. But I just think them coming 3,000 miles, all the Eagles have to do is just get on them early. So I do think they run the table. But let me ask you this. What do you see the Cowboys doing, Tim? They've got Miami and then they have Detroit at home, and then they travel to Washington. Give me your thoughts on Dallas, especially after that game last week in Buffalo.
Yeah, that's not easy. I feel like it depends on which week I watch them, how I feel about the Dallas Cowboys. They can look as dominant as any team in the NFL, and then they can also just get waxed by a bad team. It's bizarre. And I guess like we have to let recent history be our guide when it comes to the Cowboys until they prove us different. Like they've had bravado wins. They've had big seasons, even where they've grabbed a top seed, and then they get into meaningful moments and they choke. Yeah. Do we expect that to change? I mean, at some point it's going to. I like Dak Prescott a lot as a quarterback for the most part. Right. And they have good offensive line. CeeDee Lamb's great. Some really nice pieces on the defensive side of the ball. So there's pieces there, but it always just seems to vanish in the wrong moments. And so right now, I guess we have to believe like what we're seeing with our eyes. They can show up one week and they can kind of just make another team quit. Yeah. And they can also be the ones that looks like they quit. So, so I don't know if that's a championship recipe. It makes them like a dangerous team, but also on any given week and in the playoffs, but also a team that just might not show up at the right time.
I think, Tim, you're exactly right. And I think the Detroit Lions, you could have substituted the name Detroit for what you just described, Dallas. I think it's the same way. And that's why I think the Eagles still have a real good chance to end up as the 2 seed. The real question will become, Tim, is anybody going to be able to get past the 49ers in San Francisco? But we'll save that for a little bit down the road. One last thing before I let you go is just a couple names. See if you can shed some light on. Zach Cunningham, is he close to coming back for Philadelphia? And I see Devontae Smith popped up on the injury list. Do you have any information there?
Yeah, so Smith got hit in the knee in this most recent game, and he sat out. But everything that I've seen of Smith is that he plays through like everything. So I would be surprised, at least at this stage of the week, if he doesn't end up suiting up. And then Cunningham is one of those where, it's going to be sort of touch and go all the way up to game time. And not only that, Pat, but now Nicholas Morrow ends up on the injury report as well with an abdomen. So that's your current starting group, both of them with a DNP next to them to start the week. And, Leonard, in the short sample size that we've seen, just doesn't look like the Shaq Leonard of old.
That to you too. Maybe that was a little bit overblown in terms of an acquisition, huh?
I would say so. And so the middle of the defense has been really shaky all year, and I'm not sure it's going to be much different against Tommy DeVito.
Tommy Cutlets will be carving them up. I don't. Sorry, no. I don't see it. I do not see it. I'm sorry.
8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, Pat.
Well, you know what it is, Tim? Yeah. Interesting is and this speaks what you said a few minutes ago. If Saquon busts a 65-yard run early or something like that, and the Giants sideline gets juiced, then you're what you said a few minutes ago about how you never know might turn out to be right. But if the Eagles just step on their throat early, I think they should they should boat race the Giants. But that's why they play the games, like an old colleague of yours at ESPN used to say, right?
Yeah, and should be interesting too. Like Matt Patricia taking over for Sean Desai. Yeah. And his philosophy isn't necessarily what Desai's philosophy is defensively. Came up in different schools and the whole thing. So, like, how does he make that work? Like, how do you take what as a defensive mind and mesh it with what these guys have been playing all year? I mean, I don't know. That's not exactly reflective of a team that's on its way to a championship where you're switching.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. Switching coordinators in weeks 15. You are right about that.
Feels a little shaky, Pat.
Yeah. All right. Well, Tim McManus is not shaky, ladies and gentlemen. I want everybody to follow him on ESPN.com. Always thought-provoking. And Tim, thank you very much for joining me. And I will drag you on to this high-quality program at least once more. As the Eagles, if we get into a deep type of run here, I really would like you to come back here as the Eagles, when we sort everything out and we see where they're seated. It'd be great to have you back. All right.
Yeah, I would love to. Merry Christmas to you, Pat, and to your family.
All right, Tim. Same to you, pal. Merry Christmas. Thanks very much. All right.
How about it?
All right. Tim McManus joining me there. Always great stuff from Timmy. Always great stuff. So, all right, look, that's our program for this week. Sal Pal, Tim McManus, Sean Green. And Justin Bruni, I hope you enjoyed that. I've said it now a number of times on this show. If the Eagles don't beat the Giants by 17 points, I'll be shocked. I'll just be shocked. I just see like a 31-10 game here. And the only thing the Eagles have to avoid is letting some freak play happen early in the game that gets the Giants interested. So that's it. So we'll see how that goes. Some other big games, though, this week. Like I said, Baltimore, San Francisco, Dallas, Miami, Detroit, Minnesota. So a lot of games to look out for. But the Eagles still control their own destiny as far as the 2 seed. And they should be able to keep it. All right, that's it. Thanks very much to Xander Krause for producing. And I look forward to talking to you again. I want everybody to have a Merry Christmas, please. And for once, I think it's not going to rain on Sunday. So please get out and enjoy that on Christmas Eve. Look forward to talking to you again next week on This Week in Pro Football.
Welcome to Park Bank, a return to better banking. With 7 convenient locations covering Philadelphia and South Jersey, you can now earn more with Park Bank's premier money market account, offering depositors 5% APY on balances under $50,000 and 5.35% APY on balances $50,000 and above. Take advantage of this limited time offer. APY equals annual percentage yield. The minimum deposit required to open the account is $1,000. No service charges are imposed, provided you maintain a daily minimum balance of $1,000. Fees may reduce earnings. The quoted APYs are accurate as of October 10, 2023 and are subject to change at any time. For more information, go to parkbank.com. That's parkbank.com. Member FDIC.